Welcome everyone to a very special live presentation of AVIXA TV. I'm Mark Metzger, she's Sam Minish, and we are coming to you from Pace University in New York City to bring you coverage of Without Boundaries, an event honoring International Women's Day organized by our friends at Diversified.
I am so excited to be here because we're about to go live from the stage in just a few moments, where we'll be hearing from Melanie Kalmar, the Chief Information Officer and Chief Digital Officer at Dow. She'll be chatting with Eric Hutto, the CEO of Diversified, in recognition of this year's International Women's Day. They're going to be exploring bold ideas for creating immediate change, as well as diving into some incredibly impactful topics, like what's next for women within AV, media, and technology.
Both Sam and I had the chance to sit down with Eric and Melanie separately for exclusive one-on-one interviews that you'll get to see here shortly. In addition, we'll visit with the co-chairs of the AVIXA Women's Council to learn more about the impact the council is having on our pro-AV community.
And finally, we'll have one of our favorite episodes of Beyond Visual, an interview with Danielle Feinberg, who is our keynote speaker at last year's Women's Breakfast at Infocom.
From all of us at AVIXA, we are proud to celebrate International Women's Day and the remarkable women that make up the pro-AV industry.
We are so glad that you've chosen to join us today for AVIXA TV, live from Without Boundaries. To kick things off, I had the chance to sit down with Eric Hutto to find out why it was so critical for Diversified to organize today's event. Let's have a look. Eric, let's talk about this Without Boundaries event. Why was it so important for Diversified to build this event?
Well, within our company, the AV industry, right, in general, when I arrived 3 years ago to take on Diversified, it didn't have a lot of diversity. We just didn't have, it was a very tenured organization, our industry, and we just didn't have it. So we developed a women's empowerment group that had our best leads. And as we began to really mature and build out its charter, we realized that, well, just meeting isn't going to get it done. We actually have to get out and get visible, and we have to help other companies see how to do it. So we thought the Without Boundaries initiative is really a theme for the company. But we also brought it to International Women's Day and said, look, let's don't set any limits, and let's get out and be visible. Let's talk about the challenges, the opportunities, and a different approach, because we think that's absolutely necessary to move this forward. And that's what the Accelerate Action is all about to us, is just changing the game, actually doing something and putting money behind it and putting resources behind it makes a difference.
Talk to me more about that. As a leader, how do you make sure that bold and innovative ideas don't just stay as ideas and really turn into actual action?
Well, we have a benefit, right? We're about 2,700 people, right, in terms of associates. So not that big a company, but we are across a lot of regions. So we established an innovation team. And that sole purpose of that innovation team is to gather ideas, is to be a place where people can raise up their ideas and bring it forward to be considered. They're not thrown away. Obviously, as a technology company, we need to stay out ahead of what the roadmaps and where things are going. And really, our people are at the forefront of that, because they're working with clients every day. They work with our partners every day. So listening to them, listening to clients, we needed a place to house that and really vet it and actually give it a fair consideration. So that's what we did. We developed a team that people can come to.
That's awesome. I think when we talk about developing a team, right, recruiting women into AV and technology fields, it continues to be a challenge. So what are some strategies that companies can employ today to take real action and impact the career development of women in the industry?
I think there's two things that go on there. There's one, getting them in, and then there's keeping them there and keeping them on a path. And I think what we see is we get them in and they start to track. And in 2-3 years in, they vacate. And we have to start learning, why are we vacating? I think a couple of things we've learned. One is we have to start being a bit more adaptable with that workforce, because look, when the pandemic hit, everything changed. People got sick. Your parents, elderly people have to be taken care of. A lot of things are happening outside of the workplace. And I don't think we are being considered enough of that. So that change is not just women, but men too. And so being flexible, understanding, adaptable. We're a flexible work environment. We didn't mandate back to office. Now, obviously, in our fabrication shops and warehouses, people have together. But by doing that, I get access to talent all around the world. And I can allow people to work when they need to work, and yet at the same time accommodate the things going on at home. And I think that's something that we kind of got away from, and so everybody kind of fit into a mold. And I think we have to break the mold and go back to realizing that we're all individuals, we all have different lives, and if we can get results, then how do we care where you work and how you work and when you work? It's all about just getting results.
You made a comment about supporting the entire workforce. Talk to me about why it's so important for men to be involved in events like what we're doing here today with Without Boundaries and overall International Women's Day.
Well, the way I look at it is it's just a statistical issue, right? There's still more men in leadership positions. So if they don't get involved, if they don't start really embracing it and understanding it and taking the time to actually learn the talent that's out there, then we'll start to see companies decline, because talent is everywhere. It comes in all kinds of shapes and forms and from different places. And I think that to me is why we have to get involved. We have to be the advocate, because until we see more balance, right, in the leadership ranks, not overall in a company. I think we got wrapped up tracking stats around what percent were female and male in a company. The truth is, what percent are in your leadership ranks? Because that's where they begin to excel. And by the way, when younger people look up and they can see themselves, they want to come to your company. And so that's what we started fixing, was leadership. So in the last year, we've moved our director and above in our company, percent of females are now 15% to 30. We doubled it. And it's amazing. It took longer to find them. We had to go through a different process, and that's also something. You won't be able to just rapid fire this. If you're looking for a needle in a haystack, it takes time. So we have to have longer periods of recruiting, move more patient to see the slates come in, so we can see the diversity of talent that exists and then get the very best candidate in that role. And we've been fortunate enough to find some very talented women, and they are just doing a great job. And as they succeed, people want to come in and follow that.
I love that, and encouraging that acceleration across the board, right? And being very deliberate about that. So when you're looking ahead, what's one piece of advice that you would give to other companies and other leaders who are looking to create that dynamic, diverse, and future-facing workforce?
First advice I would say is just recognize the need. Don't just push that aside, and don't look at it as a corporate campaign. Just really recognize there's real talent. We need to let it rise up. We need to be comfortable with it rising up. We need to go back to being adaptable and flexible for this group, so that they can succeed in the workplace while they succeed at home too. And that goes for both men and women. We all have our own challenges, but I think that the adaptability and the flexibility is important. I think the acknowledgement that this is real talent that needs to get into key roles will be important. And if we don't do that, then we're still playing a statistical game, and that's not moving. That's not accelerating the action.
Very much so. So I wanted to ask more about Diversified and some of the successes that you're seeing out of accelerating a more diverse and dynamic workforce, right? And by empowering folks through that flexibility. What are some of those successes that you're seeing within your company?
Well, in the last 3 years, we've gone from what was traditionally known as an AV integrator to a technology solutions company. In order to do that, we have perspective. And perspective comes from diversity. It comes from a lot of different people, where they grew up, how they were influenced, experiences they gathered. And as we kind of started fixing some of our internal diversity and getting it more into leadership ranks, we realized is that we moved more toward a technology solutions company. We were more consultative. We were listening more. There's all of us had different skill sets. And so I think that over time, it accelerated our transformation. Had we left it where it was, I think we would largely be exactly what we were 3 years ago, because that's what had built that company up to that moment. But because we're very different today, we think very differently. We consider things differently. We fail more often, right? And that's not because of women or men. That's just because we've created this culture that it's okay to fail. It's okay to be different. We talk about acknowledge and accept in the company. You have to acknowledge that we're all different. We have different beliefs. We come from different places. We're all different, but we have to accept that. And that way we can then all get past a lot of that noise. And that's where I think you start to see people rise up. The ceilings move away, people are more comfortable. Frankly, I think at times when we find those ceilings, we don't do a good enough job of removing them. So we've been active at that, look, if you don't follow our values, and one of our values is diverse and united, then you probably should find someplace else to go, because we're not going to bend on our values. Performance does not exceed our values. Values trumps performance. I think that's also something I would tell companies to do, is really think about that. If we want change, if we want to accelerate it, then let's start acting like it's important.
Right. Really take that opportunity to set your policies, consider your policies, make sure that they are representative of you and your company, and how you want to present yourself in the world.
Yeah, I mean, our associates created our values. We went out and talked to them. And we had 7 at one time when I first got to the company. We got it down to the 4. But that Diversity United, it resonated with everybody. And I think it's opened the door. And again, some people, I don't know if they bought into the values, but they left. We're better for it. People who jumped into the company as part of that process of coming in, we talk about our values, and you have to sign up for them. You have to truly believe it. And if you don't, you probably won't last long. But I think that starts it. What culture, values, acceptance, acknowledgement, just creating this environment where hey, we're all equal. Let's just all do the very best job we can and all have the same opportunity to succeed and rise. And if we'll just do that, I think companies will perform. I think at some point way back when there's studies done, that companies are more diverse and inclusive, are like 4 to 6 times outperforming their industry.
Wow.
So think about that. If you're struggling with financial performance of your company, think about some of the things that inherently create high-performing cultures and companies. And the data's out there.
That's wonderful. So as we're looking forward, and as the AV industry is expanding and the definition of AV is certainly growing on a daily basis, where are those trends that you think we need to be closest watching and identifying those opportunities for that growth and that acceleration and that absorption and teaching as we're reaching into these new industries? How do we, as you're expanding as an experience company, what can you bring to the table and what are you looking for as well from the industry to help grow within these trends and within this workforce?
I think the thing that I'm excited about is it was predominantly a hardware-based industry as it grew. And in the last 3 years, as I thought about joining the company, I knew that it would evolve to software, cloud. Cyber's more important than it's ever been. And if you look at those technical skills, we've got a lot more women in some of those roles, a lot more experience over there that we can now pull in. And I think that's exciting. That trend in and of itself opens the door to a lot more talent. If you've got to carry around a 300-pound something, right, in the field and stretch cable in a 105-degree stadium, you're not going to find as many people want to do that. Yeah. Men or women. So I think the new technical trends are allowing us now to get these really high-end expertise skills that a lot of universities are producing, and we've got access to so many people now. Content creation, production, AI, that is not like a physical limitation. This is a thinking thing, and I think now we just have so much more we can get to, and I think that'll help balance it out.
I'm going to pull on that for one more second. Tell me about, so when we're talking about universities and up-and-coming workforce, if somebody said, hey, I want to get into this seems very cool, what kinds of things would you tell them to study and learn right now?
I think a lot of people focus on the technical side of that skill set, but all that we do, whether it's products or services, it all generates outcomes. And that's what our company focuses on. It's a business outcome. Learn business models. Don't just learn the technology, but grab the business model. Understand why they're in business. How do they make money? Because now you can take that technology and apply it to a better business. And then think about the soft skills. And I think later we're going to talk about this, is there's things you have to learn to do. You can be the most wonderful cybersecurity person in the world, but if you can't communicate, you can't influence, you can't bridge, you can't get that out there to see people understand why we need to do something, influence, you won't be successful. So it's not just the technical. I think that naturally comes with the degree. I think it's the business understanding. It's the soft skills that you wrap all that together and you've got an executive down the road.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Eric. And we look forward to your conversation with Melanie here shortly.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
On AVIXA TV, we have a series called Beyond Visual that celebrates the diverse stories of the individuals that make up the Pro AV industry. Last summer, we had the chance to sit down with Danielle Feinberg of Pixar. She was the keynote speaker at the Women's Breakfast at Infocom 2024. She told us about her journey into filmmaking and how she's inspiring the next generation of young women to join STEM-related fields.
So junior year, I'm taking this computer graphics class, and the professor turns out the lights and plays the shorts that Pixar made in the late 80s and early 90s. And this is 1994. It was probably the first computer animation any of us had seen. And I just had this moment of like, that's what I want to do with my life. Because it was this idea of all the math and science and code I had been learning coming together to create worlds and characters and tell stories was just like, just magic to me. And everything sort of was like, I have to do that. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I have to do that. I went to this little quirky private elementary school that was awesome in Boulder, Colorado. There was just sort of math and science all around me, and I loved it. There was 7 people in my 6th grade class or something, and so there was no girls don't do that kind of thing. So I think that was a real foundation for me in terms of I got good at math and science and hadn't had that undermined by this notion that girls didn't do it. The gender gap was most obvious and problematic actually when I got to college. There were less women in math classes, but there were way less women in computer science and engineering. And it just kind of put me in a position, as it does most people, I think, where you walk in the room and you don't feel like you belong. And everything that happens after that, if it doesn't go perfectly, just sort of serves to underscore that. So I've worked at Pixar for 27 years. When I showed up there, Pixar had made one film, and I sort of dropped in on the second film having no idea what I was doing. There was no one else that had made a computer animated feature-length film, so we were making it up as we went. It is a company full of really wonderful people. It was almost like the home for the misfits. It was like the weird art kids and the weird computer kids, but like they had found their home, you know, and they were making something really cool. It's a very unique culture and place, and I love it there dearly. I think for a long time it was just about trying to make great movies, and the technology was advancing and figuring out how to do that. Then there's a certain point where you're a little more established. We were bought by Disney, and you turn around and you realize that, like, hey, these rooms are really uneven in some places, and that's not cool. Like, we need to do something about that, and we can't just say, well, we didn't get any applicants. I was going out to give talks at girls' STEM camps, and I talked Pixar into hosting some Girls Who Code summer camps on campus. And like the cool thing about that was that the girls were so excited to be at Pixar. The early camp that I spoke at, that was the thing that I loved the very most was, you know, at the time I had a VHS tape that had what we call a progression. So the storyboards of a shot, and then the camera version, and then it had animated characters, and so as to the final shot. And I'm pressing play and pause on this VCR, and I have a big sheet of paper that I'm drawing the XYZ axis on and telling them how we do the math to make this movie, and trying to keep it all very much in the realm of what they might have already learned between 7th and 8th grade already. And so, like, you've only learned the XY axis, here's what the XYZ axis is, and our movies are made up of points that are plotted on the XYZ axis. And seeing how excited they were about that and their eyes light up, it felt very similar to when I was in computer graphics class and my eyes lit up the same way and was like, that's what I have to do with my life. But here I was with these girls at this critical age where that's where girls tend to drop out of STEM or being interested in STEM. And I think when you understand that you can create with math and science, that's a huge thing for girls. My hope is that people understand the value of having a room of people who have had a variety of experiences. And I think it's really human to want people who agree with you or who look like you because it's comfortable, but knowing that having a room with diverse experiences and backgrounds and opinions is going to get you to a higher level. And it is fundamentally going to change the product that you are making or what you are creating in that room. That is a critical thing that we've really been missing out on for a long time.
The AVIXA Women's Council exists to provide a global community of professionals committed to supporting and empowering women who work in technology and AV through learning, networking, and building long-lasting relationships with other women and allies across the industry. The Council is proud to partner with Diversified to bring you today's Without Boundaries event. Our colleague Samantha Powell recently had the chance to sit down with the Council's co-chairs, Brittany Antonelli and Christina Cruzeiro, to learn more about their journeys and plans for the Council in 2025.
So I am so thrilled to be joined by Christina and Brittany, co-chairs of AVIXA's Women's Council. So thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. So if you could just tell me a little bit about yourselves and what is your role on the council?
I'm Christina Cruzeiro. I'm currently the regional sales manager for Sharp in Canada, and I'm very passionate about equality, and I've been working as a co-chair for the AVIXA Women's Council for the past year now, but I have quite a bit of experience with the council as I spent 5 years leading one of the local groups in Toronto, which was one of the largest groups at the time that was running in North America. So it's an honor to work with our local leaders.
I am Brittany Antonelli. I am currently a design engineer for AVI Systems out of Detroit, Michigan. I have been with the Women's Council for about 4 or 5 years now. This is my first year as the co-chair for the overall Women's Council, but just like Christina, I've had previous years working with the local Detroit branch region here for their councils. So I'm very excited about this. I'm excited to be here and just the overall concept.
Can you share a little bit about what your key goals are for the Women's Council this year? And how do you hope to really drive meaningful change within the industry?
Sure. So our number one goal is to continue to promote equality and, making everyone feel like they're welcome in this industry, especially as we hear about many companies that are dropping their DE&I programs. It's super important for AVIXA to be that safe place for women to come for advice. We want our council to offer that. We want to support women in their well-being and provide them with educational opportunities to network, whether that education comes from events like the one that we did in January about how to get your CTS, or comes from opportunities through networking, such as what we provide at the InfoComm breakfast every year. That's what we want to continue to work on this year.
Has there been a mentor or role model in each of your careers that's really significantly shaped your career in AV? And what valuable lessons would you say that you've learned or insights that you've learned from them that you can share with our audience today?
So for me, my number one from day one was my high school teacher. To this day, we're still in contact, but she basically, I've grown with her through those 4 years. And then even now, I have a handful of mentors, both male and female. And I think the best part is having the support from both genders and knowing that everyone's on my side. And when it comes to certain aspects with that. So being in the AV industry and even have male role models and that support system is crucial as to where I am today.
Some of those early mentors for me were people like Brandy and Tammy, who are both happen to be past chairs of the AVIXA Women's Council. And I saw what those strong ladies were doing, not just in their careers, but also for everyone else in the industry. And it really gave me a sense of it's important to give back and to, hold the door open for the people that are coming up behind us. So that was definitely something that I really learned from them. I've also benefited from having sponsors in the industry. And I would say that those sponsors for me have actually been male allies. And these are people that have spoken my names in rooms that I haven't been in and really helped me get to the next level in my career. So I'm extremely grateful for that as well.
For our audience that's watching and listening, is there anything that you want to share that the Women's Council is doing that's coming up that they can get excited about or they can and look forward to?
Yeah, so on March 10th, the Women's Council will be virtually hosting our International Women's Day celebration. So we invite everyone to join that. We're really excited about it. And then we can't wait to see everyone at the breakfast this year.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join me today. So thank you so much. And we will keep our eyes peeled for what the Women's Council is doing in the future.
Our keynote speaker for today's Without Boundaries event is Melanie, Kalmar, the Chief Information Officer and Chief Digital Officer at Dow. She's been with the company for almost 40 years now and is a true champion of women's development and empowerment. Moments ago, Mark was able to catch up with her before she takes the stage this afternoon.
Thanks, Sam. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for taking a minute to chat with me before you're on stage. Talk to me first about why is today's event so important to you and why did you choose to be a part of it?
Well, thanks for having me here, Mark. As you can tell, I'm a woman in tech, and this event and events like this all around the world are really important to me. And we all need to band together to really look at opportunities to help the next generation elevate in the field of tech. Yeah. So a lot of opportunities there, from being creative to being deep technical. And there's a place for, a lot of women in this field.
Right. Now, you've been with Dow for almost 40 years, is that right?
38 years.
38 years, okay,
yeah.
Not quite there yet,
Yep.
Yes. What kind of change have you seen in the technology industry with regards to women in this field?
Yeah, there's been substantial change. I know 38 years ago when I started with Dow and all through my schooling, I was literally the only woman in school, in the room at work, and I'm seeing more and more women. Our challenge is we get a lot of women in the door. It's keeping them to get to those higher level opportunities, and that's where we really have to work. And I think it starts at the top, and if you can show good diversity at the top of your company, there's the saying that if I can't see myself there, it's hard to get there. So we have to show that, women can get to the top in the tech field and then help the other women get there as well.
Yeah, that's great. What other types of solutions do you think that companies can be putting in place to recruit, like you said, but then also to retain and be able to help elevate women and help them to progress through their careers?
Yeah, I think a really important activity that any company needs to enable to help women in the organization is mentorship programs, mentorship and sponsorship. I think what I've seen and what I experienced personally is, a need to build confidence in women, and I think the mentorships will help with that. And like I said, if they see other women that are in leadership positions, and those women in leadership positions have a big accountability to help with the mentoring. But I also think, benefits policies that help, because yes, women are the ones that have children, and you have to be flexible to support that throughout a whole career. And make sure that when those women leave the workforce to have their children, there's a good path forward to get back into the workforce. And I think that's really important to put in place as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much, like I said, just for taking a quick minute. Good luck. We'll see you on stage, and we look forward to hearing a whole lot more.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
Thanks, Melanie. Well, Sam, it is just about time for us to go to the main stage and hear the keynote address for today's Without Boundaries event here in New York City.
We'd like to thank you again for tuning in, wherever you're watching. I'd like to give a shout out to the women and allies around the world who are leading through action and example. We cannot think of a better place to celebrate International Women's Day than right here in New York City at this event. Looking ahead to InfoComm, be sure to stay tuned to AVIXA's social media channels for more information about the AVIXA Women's Breakfast. It's always a highlight for me, and I hope to see you there.
Thanks again for joining us. But before we go to the stage, let's have a look at this video from the company who made today's event possible, Diversified.
We hear about this sticky floor syndrome where women kind of get caught on the bottom and they don't uplift themselves and, try and get out of a rut. When I look at, the staff and the environment that we've created around ourselves, if there's a closed door in front of us, we're breaking through it.
Representation is important because if you don't see yourself there, you can't imagine yourself there. So whether it starts as who your teachers are in elementary school and middle school and high school, the type of colleges you go to, the work environment that you're at, knowing that you see someone who looks like you, may have a similar background as you, that lets you know that's a position that is obtainable for you. So it's very important for young women to see themselves not just on camera, but behind the camera as well, so they know they too can strive to be in those positions.
Being a female in the sports industry is something that I'm very proud of, and I am very passionate about providing opportunities for women within sports and STEM and other areas of business.
Coming in here, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was able to start with no experience, and now I've been working here for over a year, loving what I do, not knowing that this is what I wanted to do in the future, and having supportive people around me. I found a new love in production, and honestly, a new appreciation for everything that goes on behind the camera.
Getting young women exposed to what is a really cool environment filled with technology and infrastructure to really foster great ideas, great concepts, and alternative viewpoints is something really important to not just the media industry, but to all industries.
We need you. We need your voice. We need your perspective. And there's a place for you. Put yourself out there, network. People are really interested in bringing more women into the business. Don't feel it's an impossibility, because it's not. There are so many women that are living this dream, and you just need to tap into it and go for it.
I want these girls to see that every walk of life, any discipline that they can choose, can be applied to these careers. None of what is brought to us in home for these experiences could be possible without the minds in behind the cameras.
Wherever you begin in your experience, you're allowed to be here, you're supported here, and we all just share this love of showing people sports and entertainment.
Walk away from people who tell you you can't, because you can.
Well, Melanie,
Eric?
we had a little bit of a chat before we got here, and let me just say that this. We were asked to describe you. So I've got some words for you, coming from people that know you and my interaction with you. So here's some of the words. Because if we went through everything that she has accomplished in her career, we'd miss the entire rest of the chat. But a 38-year career, right, at Dow, from very beginning all the way to the top. These are some of the things that people describe you as. Respectful, fair but firm, self-aware, which we'll talk about in a bit. They said also gets results, right? Gets it done, develops people. You're a developer and a bridger. In other words, when there's things that aren't going on, you bring it together. So those are just some words. So I thought it'd be better for us just to describe you that way than to go through all of your accomplishments that you've done in your career.
Well,
So-
that's very touching. That's
Yeah.
very nice.
So that's what sets the stage for our conversation today is we're going to talk a little bit about your personal journey and how you arrived where you arrived. What did you learn through those times? We're going to move into some soft skills and experiences that actually shape beyond the technical expertise that you have. And then we'll kind of move into some of the barriers that you work through. And we'll talk a little bit about barriers of the future, because I think that's more important to help people see, especially our younger women, really understand that this is what's coming. How do we get out ahead of it today so we don't have the same struggle that we've had at barriers of the past? So with
Real
that,
important. And I'm going to ask Eric a bunch of questions too. So we're gonna.
I don't think it was supposed to go that way.
Yeah, but
this way.
hey,
All right. Well, that's fair. That's
I
be
get
fair.
to decide, right?
Yes, you can decide. And you're my client, so you can do what you want, really. So for 30 more days. Oh, but I'll be really nice. All right, let's get into it. Tell us about your personal journey and how it evolved at Dow and what even got you into technology.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for hosting this for all of us that are here today. It's a very important event. And, Diversified has been a partner, I'll say a partner with Dow for 25 years. So we've known each other for a long time, not personally, but the companies have known each other. And, your company, I just want to say, stepped in during COVID to make sure, they were there every day to make sure that we could be connected with our employees throughout that whole time. So I just want to say a great big thank you. And again, thank you for hosting this. And I'm going to share a little tidbit about Eric, because he shared some descriptions about me, but we host a Dow Championship. It's an LPGA tour every year, a golf tournament. And Eric sponsored a team. He's always very supportive of the events we have in our community. And he actually hit a 100-yard chip to make eagle on the team that he played on. So he's a very good golfer.
Thank you.
Tell us a story about you.
Yeah, we'll get to the dog stuff later.
Yeah, we will. So we've got a debate about dogs, so I'm good. So how did I get into this career? I loved math. We heard somebody else just a minute ago talk about how they like math. And, I like the challenge of, what the field could bring. And rewind way back when I was in school. I just probably in the early 80s started playing around with computers in a self-taught class at my high school, because we didn't even offer computer classes back then. But as I got older and I started thinking about what I wanted to do for my career, I frankly went to the bookstore, picked up a careers magazine, opened it up, and saw that the tech field was paying the highest salaries. And that is exactly what got me into this field, and just have loved every minute of it.
So you didn't have that moment when, like we did when I was little, that said, I want to be a fireman or I want to be a superhero. It was none of that.
I actually started out, I wanted to be a veterinarian, but my dad took me aside and he said, so how are you going to handle it when somebody brings their sick or elderly pet in and you have to help them cross the Rainbow Bridge. And I kind of looked at him and I thought, I'd never be able to do that. So that was where I started, but I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. So I moved into tech instead.
And you've been in tech the entire time?
The entire time.
Wow, that is actually rare, because I think a lot of people, as they move into their careers early, they do follow the thing that pays the most.
Right.
And they look at the things that are opportunities. They think they can move up quicker. But throughout their careers, they wind around.
Right.
That's kind of how my career went. I started out as an auditor, ended up being a merchandiser, then ended up going into system integration, then ended up going to outsourcing, and then back to retail. And then you end up in this job. But along the way, I found my path, but it was way later in career. But you just knew right away.
Well, I knew right away. And, that was a very big company, very multinational, big company. And, my whole career has been there, 38 years. And, just a lot of opportunities are offered. So it's been like tech in different parts of the company. So there's been, a lot of different avenues that I was able to take within the same company and all over the world, which made it an exciting part too. But I think the key thing, and you talked about it, I mean, from an advice perspective, from a career standpoint, is I always think about, go deep, go wide, go up. And I think, as I coach and mentor the younger generation today, everybody comes into the company and they want to figure out how to get to the top job as fast as they can. And, my coaching is that's dangerous. And those of you that are in your careers know that you have to have skill. So that's the deep part. You have to have something that you can anchor on, that you are an expert in. And then I always say go wide and really learn how the company you work for makes money. You've got to understand the different areas in your company. So in tech, I worked in tech, but I maybe worked in the supply chain area for a while. I supported the marketing and sales area for a while. I went out and took a business IT job so I could understand, how one of our business units really worked. And then you can start thinking about going up. So it's you got to build your base. You got to understand I always talk about understanding how your company makes money.
Yeah. I think it's important to know that things have changed, right? You had a skill when you were, generations ago, and that skill took you somewhere. Today, it's a resume, but that resume is more than the skill. So we have teenagers still at home. And as they think about college, it's not just the grades. It's not your scores. It's also community service. It's other things that you have to, and because they've got thousands of kids that can go to that university and they get to choose now. Yep. So you have to actually stand out. So it's a much different game, even at the beginning, to actually stand out and rise up. So how did you kind of navigate when you got to certain parts of your career standing out, keeping up ahead, besides just the educational things?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think we talk about it a lot more now than we did back then. But, I can remember people around me always talking about the job they wanted next. And it's really about the skill that you have and how you can use those skills to kind of take yourself further in your career. And that's really, really important, to hone your skills and, prove that you can get to the next level with the skills that you have and not just focus on a job. And I think too many people today look at their company and their organization structure and think, boy, I want to have that job someday. And what's really crazy in today's world, by the time you get there, that job may not exist anymore. It may be a totally different job. So you got to focus on the skills and what skills are going to help you to build out that career that you want.
So when I think about that, I tell people, follow your passion, not the pay, which it's sometimes hard to do, because if you kind of grow up the way I did, you kind of grew up a little bit low income. And so when you finally start to make money, it's like it feels really good. And so you get one more.
It's addictive.
And then you actually can buy a car that actually runs. And so you kind of keep going and going. And then you wake up and realize that you actually haven't followed anything that you actually care about. And then you kind of start to struggle through that. So talk about business. Let's talk about where we make the biggest mistake.
Before you jump there, you talked about, buying the car and having the job and wanting more money. And what Eric didn't say is I'm getting ready to retire at the end of this month after a multi-decade career. But what I'm learning now is that you spend kind of the first third of your life wanting a bunch of things that you can't have because we grew up of little mean.
Right.
I did too. And then you spend the next third of your life buying things because you can. You buy that new car, you buy the new house, you buy the cool clothes, you buy the cool shoes and the purses and all that stuff that you really think you want. And then you spend the last third of your life getting rid of everything because you can't take it with you. So, I mean, it's got to be more than just the money. The money is nice, and it's nice to be able to take good vacations and have a nice home and be able to have, a couple dogs to take care of and the fun stuff that we like to do. But you got to think about the kind of what is it all about? And if you think about that early on, I think you'll end up in a place that you feel good about what you've been able to contribute and the skills and the learning that you've gained along the way, and then find a way to transition all those learnings that you got to someone else, that you acquired, all the learning you acquired through your career and your years. How do you help the next people, and how do you reach down and help the next people so they don't have to go through all the learning that you went through?
Yeah, I think sometimes when we think about business, we don't think about how we're measured. So whatever gets measured gets done. We've all heard that.
Yep.
There was a point when I was a partner at KPMG, and one of my metrics for how I earned my bonus was the number of partners I made. So if you were making partners, you grew people up and they became partners. Obviously to the firm, that meant more partners, more revenue. But that's how you were kind of rewarded. It's, can you develop people? Can you actually bring more with us? Because that's how we grew and expanded.
I like that. I like that a lot. And one of the things that I mentor a lot of women about is the fact that, you doing your job really good is important. But what's more important to move from kind of a managerial role to a leadership role is how you help other people do their jobs better. And I don't think enough people focus on that in their career. And I think it's, I've seen a lot of younger women have a hard time with that too, that it's not just about you accomplishing and you getting things done. As you become a leader, I mean, you need to be there to lead and coach and guide, but you want to let the talent in your organization actually deliver things, or that for the company, for your group.
Yeah, I think we're going to say something that's a little different. You said leaders, but earlier when we were talking, you said one of the things you've noticed about women is they have a hard time calling themselves executives.
Yes.
So let's talk about that just for a second, because that you rarely hear, and you're right if you stop and think about it. But why is that? Why is it that we can't be that comfortable? Why can't you be comfortable? And how do we get people comfortable?
That's a very good question, Eric. It's a tough one. I think we've always looked at other people as the executives. And as you start looking at yourself as an executive, it helps build your confidence. It helps you feel like, you own the role that you're in. And I think we've all got to think about, if you're in a management role, that you are a manager. If you're in a VP role, you are a VP, and you got to internalize that. And I think, I look back at my career and I think about the leaders, the executives that were there when I was growing up through the company. And I have a hard time picturing myself being as important as they were. And I don't know why, because when you get to those jobs, you are making the important decisions that you saw them make, but they were the executives, they were the leaders, and you were growing up through the organization. You've got to find a way to tell yourself that, you are making the important decisions. You are the executive now.
Yeah. One of the things that some of my executive team is here today, but we talk about is, and I try to really encourage this, post-pandemic, everything kind of reset. If you go back to in the U.S. 9/11, to the financial crisis, to a pandemic, a lot of people have been through a lot. And so I think we reset kind of back to the basics. Like, this is what's really important. And as I did that, I told my executive team, everything you learned about the job you're in, throw it out.
Yep.
Because it will help you rethink actually what a CIO is, what a CEO is, because it's not the same. And you can't use the past now really to define. So when you think about what I grew up with, I grew up under Sam Walton, Bernie and Arthur at Home Depot. I mean, you go through these groups and it's this Ross Perot Sr. It's a very different generation of leadership. And what you learn from them, I think, is actually more applicable today than some of the generations in between.
I agree 100%, because they were pioneers. They were building these companies that we all know today from nothing.
Yeah.
And then we had kind of this in between where everybody tried to fit a mold. And like you said, I like the reset from the pandemic, and we all need to step back and say, kind of, what does my role really need to be going forward? It doesn't have to be kind of the textbook or the way it was described before the pandemic,
Right.
because we focused on the things that were really important during the pandemic. You couldn't do everything. You couldn't be together. So you had to focus on the few things that really mattered.
Yeah, I think the thing that hit me the hardest was when I grew up in leadership, they were kind of presidential. Everything, GE, remember Jack Welch, all these things you read about. When I was growing up as MBAs and studies, that's not who it is anymore. So I always thought, well, that's what I'm supposed to be like. If I ever get to that position, I should be that. And I am the furthest from any of that. I mean,
Yes, you are.
I am?
I like your
Okay.
style.
Yeah.
I
All right,
like
great.
your style.
But
put your
broken grammar,
shoes that looking at that and thinking, oh, I don't want to be that, but I want.
You want to be you.
Help. Yeah, I want to be me, but I want to help move a company's strategy forward. I want to help contribute. I want to, help people by building jobs for other people.
Yeah. I think the other thing about, we were thinking about just how you build the future is I talk about, and it's not mine, it actually comes from our military, but ship made self. The day that 3 years ago when I came into Diversified and we were talking about culture, I said, okay, folks, it's about ship made self, but that wasn't exactly the culture. And the AV industry is about sales. And so sales kind of led it and sales kind of drove it. And it was all about, do I get my commissions? I hope everybody else got paid. Yeah. Now, I have some great sellers and we have a great group of people today. Some left and some stayed. The ones that are out here, they're staying. There's some of them in this audience. Is because they care more about the ship and the shipmate now. And everyone's winning. Everyone has to win. If only one person on the team wins, then really the larger part of the group is losing. So
I love that. And I think we all learned a lot the last few years about collaboration and how important it is to collaborate together. And the prior CFO at Dow told me once, and he told a whole group of people, he said, when we're working and we're doing our day-to-day work, we all focus on kind of our group and what we need to do to make our group successful, whether it's the finance organization or the IT organization or a business unit. Everybody focuses on their group. And the day you retire, you don't really care about how that group does. You care about how the whole unit does, how the whole company does, because, you're vested in that company. You probably have some of their stock. Oh, yeah. You're dependent on. So it is interesting. I like that.
I think, so let's talk just about some of your other soft skills. You were described at the beginning, those words I used. So besides the technical skills that we're encouraging and driving to get more of our women into STEM, there's a business acumen that I think sometimes is overlooked. Yeah. And we don't really drive the financial side of understanding it. And you even brought that up to me, that you feel like that's missing. And then I think about the soft stuff. So it's the influence, it's the bridging, it's the, how do you handle conflict? We almost need to rethink how we're rounding our women and our men into the future of how they can become, good corporate citizens and also great managers, leaders, and executives. So tell me about how you navigated that. How did you get that? Did it just naturally come, or did you seek it out? Because I know you took some executive courses at Babson and places to keep furthering your learning.
I did. And I mentioned one of the courses that really influenced and impacted me personally, as well as my career, was one that was called Your Best Self. And the professor started the course by putting a report card up on the screen. And there was an A in math, maybe a B in science, a C in, algebra. Think about, a ninth grade student or something. And the professor, she looked around the room and she asked us, she said, well, if this was your child's report card, what conversation would you have? And we all kind of said, well, why did you get a C in algebra? What can we do? Can we get you some tutoring? Can we get you something to help you improve that grade? And she just looked at us and she said, well, why wouldn't you talk to your son or daughter about what is it about math that you like? Because you got an A in math, and help me understand what it is that that get you excited about math. And I think the moral of the story here and the outcome of the course was we've got to focus on our best self. What are we good at? And we always hear about how you build a team by hiring people around you that have skills that you don't have.
Right.
But it's really true. I mean, you've got to hone in on your skills that you're good at, and you can't be an expert in everything. So don't try to improve everything about yourself. Be really good at what you're good at, put a good team around you, and that's when magic happens.
So there's a shift in thinking, because remember, you had to be well-rounded. You had to have all these skills and all of the things. And I think there's few people that can do it.
There are a few.
Yeah. So that's why I think Joyce said it. You hire a really good team, right? The most important decision you make, right, is the team you hire, because they fill all those gaps that you actually maybe not even have an interest in. You're not going to be naturally good at, and it takes away from you being so good at what you are. So I think it took me a lot longer than you to reach the executive ranks, and I got there a different path. But one of the things that I realized about 47 years old, it's about 13 years ago, not that long, was this is what I am. And it took a long time to get there, because I didn't have these types of days where you could come and gather as a group and talk about these conversations to help you start thinking differently now. You just went along and found it out, and luckily you found your way, or you didn't. So I think that's the importance of
I was going to say that.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it is critically important, and I love the fact that, it's a Women's Day, but it's really kind of for all of us here, not just the women here. And it's got to be super important to you because you're sponsoring this.
Yes, it is.
Maybe you can talk a little bit more about why it's so important to you.
Well, we talked about that. So here's why it's important to me. I grew up in a little bitty town in Arkansas, like small town, and then 12 miles out of that town in a community of 100 people. And so it didn't go up. You either graduated and it went down, or someone passed away. So I don't even know if Center Hill exists anymore, but when you grow up in, on a cattle farm, you didn't have a lot, you kind of, it's not the same struggle, but it's a struggle. And so in that community, there were the rich and the poor. There was no in-betweens. We were on this side. And so comes with that is, as we all know, kids can be mean.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of that. And then you're fighting to be, heard or recognized. All of that kind of working through, I put myself through college. My mom was my roommate. She got down with cancer and she moved in. So I didn't get kind of that normal flow. But what I really realized is that helping my mom get to that moment, that's kind of what it's about, is helping people, being there for the people that matter the most. And then I kind of got through, and you've got people moved up. You did a great job. I thought working hard was the answer. It actually wasn't. Get the results. You can do that hard way, or you can do it the smart way. I just thought working hard would always get me. That's what I was told. It actually didn't. I watched people all around me who had the soft skills, who had the other things that I just didn't focus on, walk right by me and going up. Now, some of those people get up to a certain level and they realize they're actually not qualified or competent, but they just played the game better. They understood the game better, and I just didn't. So I think when I got through all this and I realized, if I ever get to that point where I can help more people, let's help more people. And I think maybe it is a generational thing, right?
I think it is. And, I have a very similar background story. Grew up on a farm in a very small community, but I won't take everybody through my story. But yeah, it is, the soft skills are important. But I said earlier, go deep, go wide, then go up. You've got to have that base. You can't just have the soft skills to get you through. And, I look at women and their careers, and I think some women do tend to lean more on the softer skills when they maybe even have the technical skills, but that's what they're more comfortable with. And I think you've got to find a way to balance across both to be really successful in your career.
I think sometimes we talk about, you hear the phrase, read the room. And that's something also a skill that we don't teach very well for anybody, is how do you actually read a room? To your point, when do you apply the technical knowledge in the conversation? When do you apply the emotional side of the intelligence of that conversation? And then when you put the soft skills in, or the business side. And it's hard to figure all that out. So we lead with our most comfortable position. And I think on y'all's panel, you even said it, sometimes that just doesn't resonate. It's just not how it's going to be received. So you just kind of receive it. So I think there's a lot to be said about a different approach. So we're going to lean into that a bit. So how do we do it different? How come after decades and decades and decades, we're not making the progress?
We aren't. It's and the progress you're talking about is women in leadership roles. I mean, we've made really good progress. I think if you look at a lot of companies, we get a lot of women in the door, but it's how do you keep them and help them move up through the company? You know, I look at the leadership team at Dow. We have 12 people on our leadership team, and there are 7 men and 5 women. So we've got a pretty balanced leadership team, but we aren't equal. I mean, we aren't where I'd like to see us be. Should be 6 and 6 in my book. But you know, just you know, we aren't making the progress that we should be. And you know, the theme here is, you know, accelerate. It's about accelerating. I mean, I get angry because we've you know, we've talked about it for years. I think we've made people more aware of the challenge that's in front of us for women and equality in the workplace. But we haven't moved the needle. And in fact, during the pandemic, the needle went the other way. We lost a lot of the progress that we had gained. And, you know, we need to look at different ways of attacking the problem. And I've seen, you know, some programs where they focus on, you know, college age women or even younger, school aged through college age, to help them get excited about tech careers, not just any career, but a tech career. And like I said, we've made a lot of progress getting people interested and excited, but how do you keep them there? And I think, you know, we heard some of the other panels talk about mentoring, which is really important. Mentoring and sponsorships, which are very different things, but having a sponsor is really important. Somebody that's going to show you the ropes and help you move up through your company. But there isn't a silver bullet.
Right.
But I think that the key that I like to talk about is it's all of our challenge.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are looking at their company. How is my company making a difference? What's my company doing around, you know, making sure there's equal opportunities and you know, equal representation across the company. But it's not just your company's responsibility. It's all of our responsibilities too. We've got to hold each other accountable. We've got to, you know, reach across the aisle and help pull other women up into the jobs. We've got to, you know, look within ourselves and ask, you know, what can I do differently to help, you know, our male allies do their jobs better? What can I do to help, you know, other women in the organization understand what, you know, their specialties are, that they can then focus on that and really capitalize on what they're good at.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it is everybody's responsibility. This will be, you know, one of those things that's out there right now. So we had this new executive order come out.
Yes.
Right. And boy, what's going to happen? As soon as it came out, I think Heather Best is in here. She's done a great job with our program. Wanted us to send out a communication. And at first I was like, nah, we're not going external. And Debbie and I talked about it. I was like, yeah, we're not going to go out and do the corporate grandstanding thing because nothing's changing. Why should I say any of it? We're just going to keep doing what we know is right.
Yep.
And instead, I thought about it a little longer because I was influenced and said, you know, I do need to at least address the associates and just let everyone know that regardless of what that says, it doesn't lead our company. We do. And as long as I'm leaving the company, we are going to do the right thing. We stay on course. We keep making the progress. And I think that that's important. So that's kind of a call to action to a lot of the CEOs out there, because right now here it's about half and half. Some are abandoning, some are continuing. It's just, it doesn't have to have a budget to do the right thing. Just keep doing the right thing. They say that most of the companies that outperform the companies in their industry are diverse and inclusive, up to 4 to 6 times more performance. So when you think about that and you look at companies that have done it, it tracks. The companies that are moving up and to the right have more perspective. They have a lot more of the diversity at the leadership ranks. So we'll talk about that because that's the approach I think we need to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's not about numbers either. We always talk about the numbers and the measurement. It is good for business. And that's our philosophy at Dow as well. And we're not abandoning our DEI program and what we're focused on in the company. I mean, we're staying the course because it's important and it is good for business. And, I personally like to talk about it as EID. I like to switch the letters around a little bit because it is about equity. And, we focus on, when there's new roles open in the company, how do we make sure that we have a diverse candidate pool and make sure that we have a diverse interview panel. So we're, making sure the opportunities, are there for people that are qualified for the job.
It's funny. You could take that to all of the communities, right? That we need to improve. It really comes down to changing the way that we think about hiring. You said skills experience. I totally agree. It's not a role job. It's a skill experience. But if you're looking for the needle in the haystack, it takes a little bit longer than looking for the hay because the hay's kind of there. The needle's buried.
Yeah.
And so we have to be much more patient in our interviewing process and realize that you got to plan for it to change. So if you're trying to backfill a critical skill in 30 days, you're likely going to get the same thing that you keep seeing.
Yeah.
But if you take 4 or 5 months to really go out and look for the needle, you're going to get a better answer.
I love that. I love that, Eric. And you mentioned, I talked about our leadership team and the diversity on the leadership team. And I think that's step one for a lot of companies is you can't just talk about what you're going to do. You have to show it in your actions.
Mm-hmm.
And, for women in the company, we've got, 6 women on our leadership team, and you've got to be able to see yourself in those roles,
right?
To be able to, find a way or to think that you can ever get there. You've got to see women in the top roles. And I think it's important that companies understand that, hey, start with the top. Look in the mirror. Are you doing what you're saying that what your company stands for?
Yeah, I think I call it the Champagne Tower.
Like that.
We were talking about this as, we had the same challenge when I was at Unisys in IT, right? IT service has the same challenges, but it's a little better. But if you really want to fix this, I always thought about fix the leadership because we spend all this money on unconscious bias.
Yeah.
And I believe to keep doing that.
Yeah.
But in my lifetime, how much am I going to change that ingrained behavior in somewhat DNA? Or what I could do is simply fix the top of the company and then let it work in my favor. So that's the Champagne Tower. When you pour from the top, it's pretty beautiful and fast. When you fill it from the top, the bubbles are all gone by the time you get there. And it is a lot of time and effort. And so I think that's why I say about a different approach. We just have to really think about what is it we want. When the government started tracking all this in the US, it was all about statistics. We talked about that. It is not a statistical game because you can pad stats, as we all know, and you can make it look good, but it didn't change anything. And I think that's been the last couple of decades is we just worked to the number to make sure we didn't get audited, but we really weren't changing where we were positioning this so that could exempt change and actually make an impact.
Yeah, and we can all talk about it. Like I said, I think we've raised awareness to the point where we all understand that it's a challenge, but what are we doing about it?
Right. And then actions are louder than words. All right, so let's switch just a little bit. So lessons learned. This advice you would leave, and then we're going to open up some questions, but what advice would you say as you think about the future? Don't do this. Think about this. What would that one thing be? Or maybe...
Well, I would say the most important thing that I learned along the way is being self-aware. You have to be self-aware. You have to understand, like you said, you have to be able to read a room. You have to, apply situational leadership because no situation is the same. You're going to walk into a lot of crazy situations that you could never make up or dream. So you've got to be able to be self-aware and understand how you personally would address situations and not change who you are. But I also think another thing that I would leave everyone with is, and maybe it's because I'm where I'm at in my career, but legacy comes to mind for me. And it's not necessarily about the legacy that you leave behind. It's the legacy in front of everyone else, in front of you.
Right.
And what are you doing I think we get caught up in just, going to work every day and doing our jobs. And what is it really that we're trying to impact and change? And if you can really think about that and kind of change some of your actions based on making sure you're accomplishing what you want to accomplish, because seriously, the time does fly by, and you get to the point that we all want to get to, I hope, that you can retire, and you have to really ask yourself, did I make the changes that I wanted to make and make the place better for the generations that come behind me, or did I just come in and do my job every day? But I think it's important to think about that, and think about that early in your career to get yourself set on the right path.
You know, we just had our big global summit kickoff, and so we had a lot of our associates and partners that came in, and we had a keynote speaker, Aisha Bowe, and she is phenomenal. So our theme obviously is without boundaries, so it's a little bit of a space theme and all that. So we found her because we went out and looked, and she is amazing. So she first puts up her report card, interesting enough, to your story, and it's a 2.5 grade point average, and she says, that was me. And so she said she went into her counselor and said, what should I do? And literally the counselor said, you should think about cosmetology.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So I'm going to keep going with this story because you're going to love Aisha. So she goes back and she says, no, I'm more than that. You know what she graduated with in her degree? She's a rocket scientist. Went to work for NASA. Then she started 2 companies, of which her mother helps her run one. Wrote a book, and now she works for Blue Origin. And I likely think we'll see her in space soon. She's 39.
It's an amazing story. That's an awesome story.
And what I really took away from her, because I just was enthralled with everything she said, and she's actually really, really admire her. She said, look, there's only one thing that limits you. It's yourself. It ain't all this other stuff we like to talk about. It's you. And I decided that day when I was told to go think about cosmetology that there are no limits. I can be what I want to be, and I will just do it. And there was no silver spoon. There was no easy path. But if you want to go read her book, you should go really look at what she's done. She's phenomenal. And that to me is what we need to be really instilling more than anything. Your voice is the only voice that matters. Your individual voice is all you should be listening to, and don't set any limits.
I love that story. I absolutely love that story. You know, when I was coming up through my career, I was probably 5 levels below where I'm at now as the CIO. And I had a leader tell me that I was as far as I was going to get in my career. And I remember just having this sinking feeling, thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? And, I asked him kind of, well, what basis are you saying that on? And he said, I just have a feeling. So I think you're as far as you're going to go. And actually I walked out, and maybe that's what this woman did too. I walked out and thought, I am going to prove that guy wrong. And that was my motivation for a big part of my career, is that, somebody isn't going to tell me that I'm done before I say I'm done. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, along the way, I can think of some people that really influenced me. And I had a 2009 Dell bought Pro Systems, which I worked for. So we were integrating into Dell. And I got to work on the go-to-market side for the Pro side. And a lady, Joyce Mullen, worked on the Dell side. And you know Joyce. And so we had to work through a lot in like 90 days, how we're going to come together, go to market. And she was wicked smart. I mean, just wicked smart. And I learned a ton. She actually helped me move into the Dell side and learn a little bit of the ropes. So I'll fast forward now. So about 2000, maybe I think 16, 17, whenever it was, there was a CEO job for a company called Insights. It was like an $8 billion company. And so going through the process, yes, I can say it now because at the time I didn't want my CEO to know. I was down to the final 2. Guess who the final 2 were? Joyce and I. And Joyce got the job. And I couldn't be happier for her. I called her up and said, the right person got the job. And she's led that company phenomenally. I mean, it's really performed well. But she was really influential because it's just watching her navigate the politics, the landscape, which, by the way, as you know, was a lot of men at her level. And she was just brilliant, but determined. And she didn't set any limits. And then when she saw her moment to leave, she did. Yep. And she set herself up for success. Now she's CEO of an $8 billion company and doing really, really well.
That's awesome. And I love the fact that you contacted her and congratulated her and said she was the right person for the job, because we talked about this a little bit in the back quarter of the room, that, a lot of times men have an ego challenge, that they can't do that. They can't, I don't know, maybe you can explain it better than I can.
I don't know if I can explain men. All I think it's just how you were raised. I do think there's a lot of things in you. I find that people that succeed and have a little bit more of that thinking grew up in a harder path. They understand hard things, and I think I have more humility about life because you've been in positions you had to be humble. And so when we think about hiring into leadership roles, I'm looking for those attributes as well as the skill experience, but less about how long have you been a VP of purchasing or whatever. It's not as important because you're shaping a culture.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and we are hiring now. In fact, we're building out a whole new region in Mumbai, and we do a whole first round of interviews on culture fit because that's more important than, the skills and capabilities are important, but the culture fit is so important for companies today.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to, when we think about culture, it's about beliefs. And now we're kind of back to perspectives. And again, I think the more perspectives we have, the better decisions we'll make. I think the better business we'll have. I think clients that you work with, like yourself, I'll never forget sitting in some of your meetings. We just had one back last year where you all were thinking about bidding us out. Thank you for not doing that.
Hey, gotta keep you on your toes.
I know. Well, you did. Actually kept me nauseated and more like sick. But you yelled it the next day. You let me know, so it was all good. So I only had to suffer for 24 hours. But when I think about that, you're looking across at us, aren't you? You were assessing: are you our cultural fit?
Absolutely.
Are you going to be us? And we are, which I think is why we're a good fit. And we've been around 25 years. More work to do, but I also think that's going to be more important. People are beginning to take notice.
It absolutely is.
And there's so many talented people, companies, organizations. You have choices. And I think you have to think about that too. So,
And it's culture not about, making sure you have a group of like-minded people. It's culture about, like you said, the underlying beliefs, but the diversity of thought. And that's really important.
Okay. We want to open it up for questions in the audience because I know she have a lot for her right here.
For Eric.
Yep. Got some over here.
Hi, my name is Elena. I work at Fordham University in AV, and I've worked there for 2 years. You guys in the previous panel talked about creating a good team, which I think is very true. What if you're just joining the team? So when I joined the team, I'd already been a student worker there. But now not only was I becoming my former boss's colleague, there are some people where now I was the boss. So kind of navigating that personality-wise, skill-wise, role-wise.
Yeah. That is a really hard step, especially early in your career. And I think for women, it's really hard as well when you go into an organization that's mostly men, and now you're the leader of the organization or group. But I think I think it was Friday that mentioned, listening. And when you come into a group, whether you've been in that group already and now you're in a different position, you've got to think differently. And the advice that I was given early on when I became a leader was that the team you lead, as soon as someone changes on that team, whether it's a new person coming in or somebody on a different role on the team or somebody leaving the team is different. So you've got to get the team back together to assess how you're going to operate as a team. And I think the most important thing is being, open and vocal about how do we want to work as a team. You shouldn't just go in there and assume things because that's the way they were before. You're in a different role. Therefore, the team is a different team now. And you've got to acknowledge that and have the conversation as a team around what are you going to focus on and how are you going to work together.
I added to that, you're in a different level. You're in a completely different role. So one, promote yourself up mentally and recognize that you are the leader. Now, doesn't mean you have to be directive. So the questions you're asking now are way more important than the statements you make. Because when you're asking questions, people feel like you want to know how they feel. You want to know what they think. And it feels like they're part of it. And it kind of sometimes diffuses a little bit of that, why are they the leader? But just think about that too. It's the approach. And you can do it. But I tell you this, you will lose some people at times and let them go.
And that's
If
okay.
they're not strong enough to accept you as the leader, then you don't need them anyway. And there are plenty of people who will. So just have that courage too, to know that just because somebody leaves, it's not a reflection of you. Sometimes it's more a reflection of them. Right.
Hi, my name is Jane. My question is a bit broad. I guess I'm just wondering in terms of the Champagne Tower. I'm curious your thoughts on language that's used in your office. I know, like, an example that comes to mind is I feel very disrespected when called a female. And so I think it's important that with trickle down, with starting from the top to inspire and change the culture, how do you facilitate conversation about specific terms or, again, just general language, shared in an email, shared in meetings? How is the language that people use, if it is not inclusive or if it's not inspiring conversation and empowering team building, how is that discussed and changed?
Well, the good news is I have my chief people officer here, so we're just going to give her the mic. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that to you, Debbie. But we do talk about it. Look, we have a respectful workplace policy. It just starts there. Set the expectations. We all know what respect feels like. We all know words that we choose, how they make people feel, right? That's the truth. So the people who choose not to understand that and make you feel comfortable, or they say things that we know are not appropriate, and we've had some of that at times, those are the people we help find a new job, right? Honestly, we do. We've, and some of the people in the company are here, and you know this, right, Chris? When I came, we had a lot of people who did not understand our policy, and it was a zero tolerance. And we exited a lot of people. We just exited them. It sets a message, right? So it's incumbent upon the executive team to start it. And you start it with a policy, and then you enforce it. And then every time you catch it, you correct it. And it's not just up to me. I mean, everybody in the company can call somebody out for that. I think it starts with that. It's just setting an example and holding to it and being strict about it. But it's going to happen. But here's what I would tell you. When it happens, very politely say, I just want you to know that doesn't feel right. You have a voice. And it's okay. It doesn't matter what level they're at. Somebody can tell me that I said something that offends them, and I will sit back and think about it and go, well, maybe you're right. Maybe that wasn't the best way to present the conversation. We just have to own that. But you have that voice, use it. And I would say at the same time, it starts at the top, and we have to enforce it. And there's got to be zero tolerance for things that make people uncomfortable, because our obligation is a safe, enjoyable environment where you can succeed at your will, not the way people treat you. So hope that helped a little bit. But and by the way, if the company doesn't believe that, find a new company. Just move on.
I agree. You have to stand up for yourself, and you have to have a voice and know that you have a voice. And I think a lot of it, like you said, Eric, you have to say something, but you can say it respectfully too. You can't say, you idiot, why are you saying that?
Well, you can, but it's not going to go.
You shouldn't. I mean, you're not going to get where you want to get. So, yeah.
But that's a very good question, and it's still a big challenge, because here's why. All these words change through social media. I don't even know what's acceptable sometimes. And do you use this word? Do you say it this way? And it just keeps evolving. And so it's really hard, just be honest, as a leader of a company, an executive of a company, it's really hard to know exactly all the right things to do each day. And so here's what I come back to being just genuinely a good person. And good people know good words to use. So if you don't know what to do, just come back to that. As an associate, manager, leader, executive, it doesn't matter. In doubt, just think about being, what would a good person do?
I like that, Eric.
What else?
I'll ask some questions. Hey, I'm Mary. Hi, Eric and Melanie. I love this stuff. This has been great. The day's been great because I love listening to leaders and how they lead companies. And I listen to podcasts a lot about, David Rubenstein has a great podcast called Peer-to-Peer Conversation. I recommend it. It's an easy listen. But I used to read a column in the New York Times called it Corner Office. But one question they ask, and this is a question I want to ask each of you, they asked, who is on your personal board of directors? And I love it. That made me think, gosh, who would I have as a person? But I don't know. I'd love to hear. And it's kind of around mentorship, but it's also somebody, kind of goes both ways. But who do you trust, in your life? Either, a lot of people say their spouses as well, but on your personal board.
Yeah, I'm looking at my team over here because I brought a lot of women from Dow with me today. But that's something that I talk to the women a lot at Dow when I'm talking to groups and mentoring people, is that having those 2 or 3, I like to say 2 because you're one then of your group that you trust, that you can have an agreement with, that, hey, at any time you can pick up the phone and call me if you have a challenge, if you've got a question, if you want to run a presentation kind of thought through, is this going to, resonate with the people that I need to go in and talk to, is so important. And, if I look at our C-suite, a few years ago, there were 3 people in the C-suite, and one of them had shared the story that there were 3 of them that used to do that with each other, and they both made it all the way to the top of the company. So it's having those people that you can trust, that you can pick up the phone and just bounce ideas off from, give open, honest feedback to each other. Don't sugarcoat it. I mean, we always hear that feedback is a gift, but it's only a gift if it's honest and if it's given to help you grow. It's not, you can't give feedback to just have somebody feel good about what they're doing. You've got to help them grow. So I think that board of directors concept, that having, those couple people in your circle that you can lean on and really help you move forward is important.
Well, obviously, probably people you worked with in the past. So I have some executives that are now retired and they're on boards that I lean into for different expertise. But I would say my board changes. So it just evolves. So sometimes I'm going through this part of the company's journey and I need more of this knowledge. So I've got that person or two. And then it changes. You go from maybe a turnaround to a transformation to a scale. So you got to lean into somebody else. So it's kind of like you got to kind of evolve in it because the situation you're in is always changing. And then outside of all business. So yes, my wife is a great business person. And at the same time, I can just throw stuff at her and she's like going, I wouldn't say it that way. That's not the right message.
It's great.
Because she's not ingrained in the business, right? She's not ingrained in the stuff. She's just listening to how it feels. And then I would say, I have to give my pastor some credit because the reason that I actually stepped down from my last job was because he told me to. Yeah, you have a breakfast with your pastor and you talk long enough, he'll go, you need to quit. This is not the right place. Yeah. And I just looked at him and said, really? He goes, Eric, listen to what you've been talking about. So I think sometimes people outside, nothing to do with your industry, and then the inside of the industry is helpful. Mm-hmm. But it changes, honestly.
But you want to have that group of people with different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing to say about the board, I also kind of take it to the network, your network of people. It's like a rose bush, you prune it. Mm. So as you're moving up through your careers and your life, you have to understand that not everybody that was in it before are good for you now. Exactly. And so just keep pruning it. And what does a rose bush do when you prune it? It gets really beautiful. So
I like that.
I got champagne towers, roses. Man, we're going to get the dark chocolate in a moment. I got that. Because you throw that with champagne and strawberries and we are good. All right, so let's go. What else you got?
Hello. Hi. My name's Kaylee. I work at Diversified. It's super inspiring to hear your story, Melanie. And I was just curious, how would you describe your leadership style and has it evolved over time?
Oh, it absolutely has evolved. I would call myself a servant leader. I know we hear that a lot, but really important to me to help the people on my team grow and challenge them and help them, elevate and not be the loud person in the room. Or I've never looked at myself as the person in the room that has all the answers. I mean, if that were the case, I'd probably have my own company.
Right. That's right.
But that has evolved. And, as you move through your career, like I said earlier, you've got to think about the situations that you're in, apply situational leadership, whether that's to help your team grow or to help challenge them to think differently. It evolves. It does evolve, and it has evolved. But, You know, I grew up in an era in the company, and again, maybe many of you don't know Dow very well, but you know, 128-year-old heavy manufacturing, industrial manufacturing. We make, you know, sealants that hold all these beautiful glass panels on skyscrapers, and we make products that go into paints and packaging that keeps your food fresh and safe. But you know, it hasn't been an easy route, and learning you know, different leadership styles from different leaders that I've had has been important as well. And I'll say that I learned as many things that I wouldn't do as a leader from specific leaders, as well as I learned a lot of things about what I'd like to mimic as a leader. You know, just being aware of, you know, the leadership that you've had through the years, and what positive things you would take from that helps you build your own leadership style.
Right hand.
Hey there, Tripsy Coker. Coker. I didn't even say my own name right.
We wouldn't have known.
I know, I'm nervous. So I've really enjoyed this. I think just my upbringing and just having to kind of bootstrap myself and get myself out there and work my way up. It's always been depend on yourself, depend on what your skills, your knowledge. So it's hard to ask for help, right? It's hard to ask others, hey, I know that we know each other and we have a relationship, but I don't want you to feel like it's ingenuine if I've just met you and I feel like this good rapport, but I actually need your help in my career. Can you introduce me? Can you make that connection for me? Because I don't want them to think that it's inauthentic, even though it is authentic. So how do you navigate that when you're growing your career? And I struggle with it. And maybe others in here do too. They don't want to ask for help when they should be. So how have you done that, or how do you help us navigate that?
I think I'll share one of the important things that I've always looked at when I've reached out for help early in my career. I always ask myself, well, what can I help this person with that I'm asking for help on? So it's kind of a two-way street. It's not always looking for what somebody else can do for you. It's what can I do for them as well. And I think if you go into the conversation that way, you feel a lot better about asking for help, because you can say, hey, you know, I'd like to talk to you about XYZ. You know, maybe you could think about this situation different. And through the conversation, you know, give that person your input, your honest feedback and input on what you see them doing. And then you can ask for the help that you need from them. But that, to me, has always made it feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think you just take it kind of through stages. If you're just beginning, actually questions they start to tell leadership that you're inquisitive, you're curious, you're a learner. And so you want those people in your company. It's the people who never ask a question and they just work in their cube or wherever they're at, and they seem almost unengaged. So I think early in your career, more questions are better. Because again, you're going to learn about you, right? So you're actually doing yourself a big favor, because I'm beginning to learn who you are because you ask me questions. Now you get about middle management, right? And you're expected to know a lot more. So the questions you ask have to be really thoughtful, because who said about knowing, it was annoying to them. It's true though. So think about the question you ask, because their time's just as important as yours, right? So don't do it just to be asking questions. And then when you get to probably our level, then you have a lot more questions actually. So now
we're asking more.
We're asking more questions of you all, and I think that's true. That the higher up you go in the company, and my team knows this, it's the questions you're asking, not the statements you're making.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you will fail to learn. You will fail to keep in touch, and you will not lead your organization to a good place. So I think it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Right? More questions at the beginning, a lot more questions at the end. In the middle, it's maybe half and half. But if you're afraid to ask a question, ask yourself the environment you're in. Because I actually respect people who don't know something, because I don't know everything.
Who don't know something and are willing to ask.
Exactly. Yeah. Raising your hand is a sign of strength.
Yeah.
It is not a sign of weakness. So. Oh, we got stop. Okay. All right, Melanie.
So wrap up here.
I am going to wrap up. I've got this. All right.
No, I was going to.
You're going to wrap me up? All right, wrap me up. Let's go.
What's your piece of advice you're going to give this crowd as they leave?
I would say some of the things we hit. Yeah. Follow your passion, not the money. I'm telling you, money will come with it, and you'll be happier. You'll find that balance, whatever that is in life, because you're following your passion, and it won't feel like work. The other thing is, do yourself a favor. Learn a lot sooner than I did that the only voice that matters is yours. And I had so many people, because nobody else has your agenda more than you do. And everyone else's agenda is theirs. So think about that. And if you are listening to people, ask yourself, do you respect them? Because if you don't respect them, why are you listening? And that will filter out a ton of noise to allow you to have clarity of where you want to be. All right.
Love it.
Got that?
I love it.
What are you going to do?
You said it all.
All right, great. And now, way to wrap it up. All right. So, look, we think, just want to take a quick moment to thank all of our partners, AVIXA, SVG, Crestron, Pace University, and of course, our company. And really specifically, I got to give a shout out to Heather Best, because you're the best. Just been a tremendous leader for our Women Empowerment Group and our company and helping pull this all together. Great job. All right. I think we're done. Out of here. Let's go.